Hello, and welcome, you 13 billion beautiful waking wonders, the seekers of crikey truth and freedom.
Hello there, you awakening wonders.
Sorry, every time I try to do British, I go Australian. Hello. You know what? Whatever. All you awakening to loosely fact-checked independent media, awaken to my truth, the truth.
Now is the time to awaken.
Do you think Russell Brand's audience is aware of the fact that he's calling them woke? Maybe not, because he disguises it with that accent. Now, let me and only me inform you of how to stay free. First step, subscribe. Second step, no government, no laws. I understand that's a hard sell for some of you who are into bank bailouts and regulating women's bodies. Interesting. Unregulated banks, regulated bodies. Now, this is going to be my first react video, because I got some mansplaining to do for Russell Brand, a.k.a. Woke Karen, a.k.a. Woke Lululemon, a.k.a. Woke British Steven Tyler. Alright, that's enough, sorry. And Rusty's gaslighting video titled, "Oh shit, they're coming for American citizens now." In this video, Russell works to validate right-wing political dingleberry Vivek Ramaswamy. This video's rhetoric is focused on January 6th as an inside job and the history of the FBI creating criminals out of unsuspecting Americans.
Vivek Ramaswamy has called out the FBI, claiming that January 6th was an inside job and that the FBI have a history of creating criminals in order to cuff them. So does Vivek have a point? And if he does he have to be careful?
Spoiler alert, they have been. It's been proven, and they've been doing it for way longer than Russell alludes to. Russell tries to pawn this off as a deep dive into FBI corruption. A dive so deep it makes some historians gag.
Do the FBI frequently create conditions and situations, or have they historically created conditions and situations that they then intervene in and claim that is the resolution of a case? And could every single conspiracy in American history somehow have tendrils in a deep state agency exploiting events?
Rusty goes all the way back to 20 years ago. A history too old for R. Kelly to enjoy, but too young to accurately give a full picture. To validate his point, Russell reads an article detailing the events since 9/11, where the FBI targeted and criminally groomed Americans. Dun dun dun. Now them points be valid, but they barely scratch the surface of the FBI's criminal activities. Now, if you like and subscribe videos of people reading blogs to you, then this brand, Russell Brand, a video is for you. Because Russell's video is just a homage to the great YouTube plagiarist, James Summerton. He basically reads an article at you while not mentioning the FBI's most infamous history. Hopefully that James Summerton name drop will catch the algorithm. This video feels like a brand new YouTube genre. British celebrities loudly read blogs to the paranoid. Depending on the celebrity, I'd be into it. God, I miss Amy Winehouse. Now, for those who know even a Wikipedia amount of FBI history, you probably know that FBI corruption is way older than 20 years. Ah, there goes the R. Kelly crowd. See you later. And the most infamous illegal FBI activity is so old, most of us weren't even a squirt in our mother's eye. Yet, Russell portrays the FBI's work of creating criminals as some recent development. Let's be honest. Seems like he's explicitly talking to white America. You know, because black America has endured that treatment for decades. So, let's jump in the DeLorean and go back to the past. We're gonna go back to the past. Let's go back to 1971, to Media, Pennsylvania, a place you hadn't heard of till now, where a group of activists called the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. Jesus, people, you couldn't come up with an acronym? By the way, this group remained unidentified till 2014. So much for that investigative part of the FBI. So, the CCTIT-FBI. Jesus, I understand why they didn't use an acronym. They broke into an FBI office and stole documents that confirmed public suspicions that the FBI had a top-secret surveillance program called Cointelpro. This B&E gave the country proof, in the FBI's own words, that the FBI was acting criminally, surveilling, infiltrating, entrapping, and engaging in psychological warfare on its own law-abiding citizens, specifically targeting civil rights activists. You know, that great existential threat to America. People wanting their rights. And the FBI incriminated themselves in these documents. It's a historical fact. But instead of making that point, which would have been a slam dunk for Russell's paranoia, Russell dismisses this history as a trope and perspective of the left.
The FBI set up criminal dynamics in order to make arrests. Now, that latter used to be a trope of the left. People used to continually say, oh, the FBI, which is now regarded as a kind of an alt-right perspective, is a 1960s leftist perspective, actually, or at least it was for a brief while.
Was it just a trope? Was this all just a perspective? If by that, Russell means FBI documentation of an FBI program to infiltrate and coerce criminal behavior to eradicate groups they deem subversive, then cheers, mate. You nailed it. What is going on with that guy's hand gestures? It's like he's doing Peloton for your hands. I guess that's how he gets his cardio in. Good on him. Not only does Russell dismiss this history as just some perspective,
it's a 1960s leftist perspective, actually, or at least it was for a brief while.
But he never addresses what the leftist trope was.
Trope of the left.
Maybe because then he'd have to recognize it as, historical record. This is a huge omission. You gotta go out of your way to not mention any of this history when speaking about the FBI targeting American citizens. You know, the title of the video. Jesus, Russell, did you not even Google it? Or whatever they have in the UK. Ask Jeeves? Is that still a thing? What Rusty conveniently skips over is the FBI's top secret program to fuck over Americans, called Cointelpro, the counterintelligence program. This program was executed and well documented through the 60s and 70s at the explicit direction of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. The guy was kind of like the FBI's Kanye West. Way too much time on his hands and thought everyone was a threat. Cointelpro is hyper-focused on destroying groups or social movements that the FBI themselves deemed a threat, with or without evidence. And can you guess who the federal cops felt most threatened by? The Black Panthers, the American Indian Movement, the Nation of Islam, the anti-war organizers, the hippies, the yippies, women. Do you see a theme? No white suburbia. Rusty, you could have just made a Russell Brand reacts video to Judas and the Black Messiah, or Netflix's The Trial of the Chicago 7, and that would have just made your point. Now, Rusty's a pretty big celebrity. He's got some pull. Why doesn't he try to interview political dissident and MIT professor Noam Chomsky? Old Uncle Noam spoke about the purpose and targets of Cointelpro back in a 1996 BBC interview. BBC. I wonder if Rusty's heard of that. Old Uncle Noam said Cointelpro was a program of subversion, carried out not by a couple of petty crooks, but by the National Political Police, the FBI, under 4 administrations. By the time it got through, it was aimed at the entire New Left, the entire women's movement, at the whole black movement. It was extremely broad. Its actions went as far as political assassination. Some trope, huh, Russell? Now, Russell states that
With no more enemies to fight abroad, except for the numerous economic wars being currently engaged in, the ire has turned on the domestic population. Terrorists are now simply people you disagree with.
With no more enemies to fight abroad, the ire has turned on the domestic population. A dumb statement, but at least he recognized that the U.S. is always engaged in war. It is our main export. But what makes this statement Logan Paul dumb is that the FBI doesn't turn its ire onto the domestic population. Since its inception, the FBI has focused on Americans, hence it being a federal bureau. The FBI is the federal police. They've always had their eye on the domestic population. This fucking guy. It's a shame, really, he treats his beautiful woke audience like they're maroons. And I was a part of that audience until he kept talking to me like I was some moron. And he began pandering pretty hard at white America, so, you know.
The many historic examples of the FBI being involved in the arrest of terrorists that they had in fact ultimately groomed. I believe what's being augured is a kind of global police state where increasingly we can be arrested for crimes that we maybe didn't commit or would not have committed had it not been for the intervention of law enforcement agencies, which seems extraordinary.
The government has always made terrorists out of people they disagree with. Just ask the Black Panthers. This extremely worried reaction must be because now they've turned their focus to white America.
Where the extremes are both domestic, that there's a kind of neoliberal establishment extreme, I'm using their language, and the kind of MAGA extremism.
But it doesn't change the definition of extremism. Being a white supremacist makes you an extremist. Wanting to eradicate other humans makes you an extremist. You know, like the "you will not replace us" tiki torch crowd. You know the crew. J. Crew. That Trump said were very fine people. Russell also makes a point about laws in Ireland, where being suspected of having hate speech on your computer allows law enforcement to raid your home and arrest you.
For a moment to what's happening in Ireland, that just by being suspected of being in possession of hate speech, and hate in this context is not clearly defined, that the police will be able to go into your house and arrest you if they suspect you of having hateful material on your phone or your devices.
Hey Russell, can you guess which American demographic has had their homes raided with zero probable cause for decades? Rusty loves to talk about free speech and how it's constantly under threat.
What it seems is being created is the potential for amorphous laws to be applied in various territories and for deep state and law enforcement agencies to arrest you for vague and obtuse crimes, or this tendency around the world to criminalize forms of speech, to refer to speech as being weaponized. It shows how what's being created, or at least I believe what's being augured, is a kind of global police state.
As a labor organizer, I can tell you these issues are important, that our rights are constantly under attack from corporate power and corporate interests.
Elitist, establishment, globalist tendencies.
I personally have dealt with surveillance, the stripping and disregard of my rights in the name of corporate policies, so I've experienced this. Just this history goes way deeper than 20 years. And remember, the point of this video is to validate little v, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is, I believe, a billionaire and the founder of a big pharma company. I don't know if he's the one that's going to come to the defense and aid of us poor, broke folks. If anything, he might be the one trying to oppress our rights. So it all just comes off really weird as defending a billionaire who claims to be defending the people, which billionaires have notoriously, and their track record shows, have not been on the side of the majority of the people. But hate speech versus free speech are two very different things. Free speech is expressing your opinion. Hate speech is the incitement of violence, hostility, and discrimination towards others. Hate speech is the language of extremism. And I have to point out that there were many hate groups involved in January 6th. Rusty conveniently leaves all that out. Like the Proud Boys were there, the Oath Keepers. I mean, a guy brought the Confederate flag into the Capitol building, which I don't think has ever happened. Those people are vocal and proud white supremacists, Rusty. You know, extremists. These aren't people we just disagree with. They're white supremacists. Who gives a rip if we get rid of Nazis or Confederates? You know. Again? Wasn't that the entire point of the Civil War and World War II? Jesus. And their speech isn't free. It comes at the cost of other humans. What makes free speech great is people's ability to criticize the powerful without repercussions. Allegedly. Sorry to interrupt again, but it just always strikes me as odd, those people who love to claim free speech while advocating to restrict what their female neighbors are allowed to do with their bodies. Sounds more like restrictive speech. And we all know those people, the ones who throw their middle fingers up in the air and scream, "Don't tell me how to live."
Ain't nobody gonna tell me how to live.
While actively telling people how to live, who to marry, what they can and can't do with their bodies, and what beer they should or shouldn't buy. Hey, don't buy Bud Light. Fuck you, don't tell me how to live. Okay, Rusty, so Should extremists have a safe space? Are people who advocate to terrorize others allowed a safe space? Imagine, after a racist committed an atrocity, somebody called them an asshole. Does that racist get to say, hey, don't come after me because I go after people I feel is subhuman? Fuck no. Is Russell incubating a safe space for extremists? Kind of like Elon Musk incubates baby beavers to use their pelts for hair. I'm assuming, because that top muff on his noggin ain't real. Ooh, maybe his hair is AI. Maybe it's cyber hair. It's odd watching Russell portray his audience as potential victims to oppression while ignoring the history of oppression. Is it me, or does Russell Brand have a real David Koresh vibe going? And what's up with all his Kool-Aid compliments throughout his videos? Oh, yeah! You beautiful people watching this. You stunningly awakening free people. Subscribe. Your neighbor's a sheeple, but not you. Subscribe. I'm noticing Rusty never calls his audience smart. But it's a tale as old as time. A wealthy guy who generates money off of people's attention using fear and flattery to keep their attention. They're coming for you, but I know how to keep you free, you gorgeous golden labradoodle. Reminds me of that old saying, united we stand, divided from the others. True freedom has a price. It happens to exactly cost the rights of minority groups. And Rusty describes almost exactly what happened in the 60s and 70s. That thing he dismissed as a perspective?
That's because they know that they can't just say, well, it's criminal that you're skeptical and cynical and oppositional. That's not a crime. But it would be a crime if you were to, hate the government and put a bomb on that subway. Would you do that? Oh, God, it'd be complicated. Well, here's a bomb. Would you do it? No, actually, it seems wrong. But you were going to do it, weren't you? You're under arrest.
While not discussing what actually happened? That's some real talent right there. A bunch of say nothing. Rusty could tell his audience about the FBI and Chicago police murdering Fred Hampton in his home. Hampton, who was only 21 at the time of his murder, was a Black Panther who helped organize the Rainbow Coalition, an anti-racist, anti-classist movement. And Hampton helped with the free breakfast program, which fed children every morning in the community. And he was murdered by the state because they felt threatened. Rusty could discuss the FBI coercing criminal activity from other Black Panthers, specifically Tupac's mom, Afeni Shakur. The FBI set her up almost exactly as Russell imagined a scenario could happen. And during her trial against the FBI, she acted as her own lawyer and won the case. She proved in a court of law that the FBI was creating criminals.
Have on previous occasions caused to a significant degree, to the degree where the people that had been imprisoned were acquitted, the crimes that they claimed to be resolving.
Yes, Rusty. And there's courtrooms full of records of this. Also, Afeni was pregnant with Tupac during that trial. Surreal. Or Rusty could bring up the most common of knowledge of FBI dipshittery. When the FBI wrote anonymous letters to MLK telling him to end himself. And they also tried to blackmail him. Russell is not stupid, but he certainly is playing the part. Why does he overlook all of this in a video he titled, "Oh shit, they're coming for American citizens now"? Who's doing your research, Rusty? The guy who wrote the Kylie Jenner solves racism Pepsi commercial? Or maybe is it that Nazi kid who wrote Tucker Carlson scripts? Russell seeks the truth like Tucker Carlson seeks fashion. And I don't think Russell's audience is fully aware that this history exists. And if you don't know that this has happened to minority groups for a century, then you don't know how much you have in common with them. And if there's one thing all Americans have in common, it's that the FBI sees us all as subversive threats to their power. Though some groups much more than others. It is so weird Russell doesn't mention any of this. Weird like people giving you a present for surviving 365 days on Earth. The day of your birth is such an odd holiday. Hey, congrats on not dying this year. Here's a gift card. I guess in America, birthdays make sense, because they paywall us from our health care. Waking up to this historical record of the FBI targeting its own citizens is important, but Rusty pretends this history was just some leftist perspective, trivializing the deaths of innocent Americans at the hands of their own government. This brand, Russell Brand, of pandering is wicked dumb. Well, I guess all pandering is dumb, but pretending to be at the cutting edge of the right kind of woke, the far right kind of woke, the acceptable deep state woke, is dumb. I hate to break it to... Nope. I love breaking this to you. It's always been about the deep state consolidating its power. But it's not even the state. It's corporations running the state. It's deep corporate. It's deep core. Rusty Panda's harder than Jason Aldean, and that fucking guy was born a pandering man. At times, though, it is adorable watching Russell believe he's onto something. Like he's the one exposing the truth to white people, telling them, oh, the police aren't going to protect you anymore. The true truth is the cops aren't obligated to protect anyone but themselves. And it's always been that way. Why do you think they call their badge a shield? Because it protects them from accountability. Rusty really is like the Chris Angel mind freak of sleight of hand FBI history. Any simple search, just typing in FBI corrupt, is going to bring up Cointelpro. You really got to go out of your way to skip over this. Worst Googler ever. Nope, let's be positive. Best panderer ever. If you're trying to make the point that rock music is dead, but you only rant about Imagine Dragons and completely ignore Nickelback and Limp Bizkit, you're doing your audience wrong. Unless you know your audience is completely made up of Nickelback fans. Then your brand, Russell brand, is pandering. And pandering is good for business. Well, it is their business. So, to all you truth seekers, is omitting the truth being honest? Is it even seeking truth? I wish he'd just be honest. Well, you know what they say about wishing, don't you? When you wish upon a star. There's a good chance they may sexually assault you. If this was an after-school special, I'd have to tell you that knowing the FBI is filled with criminals isn't new. It's an understanding held by almost all marginalized groups, especially the ones who dared to go against the status quo and got brutalized by the FBI's criminal behavior. I'd also have to unfortunately tell you that having a difference of opinion doesn't make you an extremist. Being a white supremacist makes you an extremist. Or being someone who thinks your religion should govern everyone makes you an extremist. You ever notice how the religious conservative politicians want a state religion just like Islamic countries have Sharia law? Is that ironic? I feel dumb for just pointing this basic shit out. So, is Russell actively seeking the truth or only reassuring truths? Is this brand just built on confirmation bias? Talk about the Black Panthers, Russell. One of the biggest miscarriages of justice the FBI ever perpetrated. This guy is like a hype man for selective history.
Or at least I believe what's being augured is a kind of global police state where increasingly we can be arrested for crimes that we maybe didn't commit or would not have committed had it not been for the intervention of law enforcement agents.
The FBI got the guns and the prisons, but we the people have the power. You don't believe me? Then why do you think the FBI works so hard to undermine the people? If they didn't believe our organizing was a threat to their power, they wouldn't go so hard at the people. At the very end of this video, Rusty barely glosses over the idea of unity among the people. That should be the focus if you care about freedom. It's a trip to watch Rusty give his perspective that factual history was just a perspective. One fucked overarching theme of his videos, and I watched a lot, it was exhausting, is that he's the guy to trust. That they are threats to your freedom, and that he's the only alternative woke authority that can counter it.
I suppose if your interest is increasing authority, you have to increase the necessity for that authority by claiming that there are threats that only that authority can counter.
Oh, the irony. If you're a Russell Brand fan, you're being pimped out to a cherry-picked version of history so Russell can sell you stickers in the name of truth and freedom.
We can't bring you this content that changes the world, changes our consciousness, and helps us to continue to awake without sticker meal. Sticker meal.
Brand fans, Brandinians, let's see how well you deal with dissenters in the ranks. Leave your anger in the comments. Mansplain to me why Russell omits the FBI's biggest scandal of criminal behavior in its history. I know when Fox News talked about January 6th and FBI corruption, they also conveniently left that history out too. I made a video on it. Check it. And if you're going to claim he's just using current history to make his point, then why didn't he bring up the FBI and Cointelpro making the news just a couple of years ago during the Black Lives Matter movement? The FBI, again, was paying criminals to create criminals to detonate that movement. There's a great podcast on it called Alphabet Boys. The podcast documents the entire thing with interviews and never-before-heard secret undercover audio recordings. Alphabet Boys. Check it. Thank you to my 69 billion beautiful awakened subscribers. Stay free. keep pandering, and always be selective with the truth.